Welcome, everybody, to the Soul Path Wisdom community class. Today is Friday, March 20th, and this is the day that our current Mercury retrograde in Pisces goes direct. So we're going to explore Mercury retrogrades in general from a couple of different lenses. We'll start with talking a bit about the shadow periods, what that means, our myths, fears, and realities for Mercury retrograde, the fact that we have water sign retrogrades all year, what it means if you have Mercury retrograde, make sure everybody, you've got your mute on, Mercury retrograde natally, and progressed changes. We'll talk a little bit about each one of these things, as well as what this particular Mercury retrograde means for us. Here's today's chart. This is the moment that Mercury is going direct, which is 12:33 Pacific time, 3:33 Eastern, a little bit later in Europe, a little bit earlier in Hawaii. It's moving it, depending on where we are in the world. And we can see that it's going direct at basically 8 degrees and 29 minutes. And that is very strongly joined with the North Node in Pisces. Mars in Pisces is also there. So we could think of this as we've done a 3-week review with the Mercury retrograde. And now as it turns and goes back in its apparent direct motion, it's very connected to this soul's purpose energy in the sky. That is the process of the lunar nodes being in Virgo and Pisces for a year and a half that started last year in January. We're almost finished this particular sign pair. And we know from many classes and conversations that this is asking us to let go of shadow or negative Virgo qualities like overthinking, over worry, analyzing, trying to think that we can figure everything out by thinking. And Pisces is much more of an intuitive, spiritual, mergy, creative sign. And that's what we have been reviewing during this time. We've been asked to surrender and trust into Pisces energy. And we can see that as Mercury is going direct, the other thing that's happening, this trine sign looks like it's showing itself, yeah, to the middle here. But let's just take it a little farther and say Jupiter in Cancer, which Jupiter was retrograde for 4 months. Jupiter, the planet that seeks truth and meaning, that expands our consciousness in the sign of Cancer, that is about nurturing, unconditional love, home, and family. So we've been maybe getting our priorities straight over these last months, maybe valuing more the simpler things in life, the caring, the connections. And at this point in time, this is in a very strong trine to Mars, which is clearly in a conjunction with the North Node and the Mercury retrograde. And so the Mars takes us into action. It supports us in moving whatever it is we've decided to do, whatever's in our hearts and our intuitive felt sense, that is helping us to move forward. And you can also see that we're in the very beginning of this process of Aries, 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 that is particularly strong next month. Don't miss this one. Don't sleep this one out. The new moon in Aries on April 17th is joined altogether. There's 7, well, we always call it planets, but the sun, the moon, Chiron, plus other planets to make this huge, brand new, pioneering, courageous, brave new start. And you can see that we are in the infancy stage of it right now with the Mars in Pisces at the North Node and the newly defined Mercury. They're kind of holding a more spiritual, intuitive, mystical compassionate energy joined with the fruits of the retrograde of Jupiter in Cancer. And this is what is supporting all the Aries, because remember, Mars rules Aries. So we are getting this direct message for action as well as uh, the higher frequency energy that will nourish and sustain those actions. That is what is meant to happen. And I know that we are in a very tragic war situation now. We're in challenges throughout the world. But I feel like we must keep looking at the positive intention, what we can build, how we can change things, how, as bad as it is meant for us to see that it's generally bad in lots of ways that we ignore, just as we're, making our best effort to live in this world, to make a living, to be okay, to be healthy. And now, as we're in this major turning point with all the outer planets changing signs, we are receiving messages to help us understand how to build a new world that is sustainable. Now, just for comparison, I want to show you this was when Mercury went retrograde. It was at 22 degrees, February 26th. And there was a fair amount of Pisces. North Node was pretty much at the same place. The sun was there at the same time. And we had some planetary movement coming into Aries. So 22 was where it started, and it reviewed all the way back to 8 degrees. That's important for you to think about in terms of your own chart. So what is Mercury anyway? Every planet represents a part of us that has a goal state that allows us to feel a certain way, to be a certain way internally. And the highest energy of Mercury is that it is the part of us that is the capacity for communication. It represents our rational mind, the way we process data, the way we do all of the informational communication energies. We talk, we teach, we write, and we also receive information. We listen, we learn, we read, we observe. Simply observing is a Mercury function. In Pisces, the highest level that we are aspiring to is the attainment of oneness and bliss, to be compassionate, to be in our imagination. The sign of Pisces is, in my mind, the most psychic, sensing, intuitive sign. It represents spirituality and mysticism, creativity, especially transcendent forms of creativity like poetry. Oh, come back here. Uh, Poetry, film, literature. The sign of Pisces merges, dissolves. We have empathy through Pisces, sometimes way too much empathy. We get overwhelmed. We absorb the pain of the world and all of the suffering. And when Pisces is not operating in a good way, we have deception, illusion, confusion. Sometimes the whole thing with Pisces about truth is that it's, very specifically lies and manipulation, but sometimes there's just so much confusion, it's just unknown. Uh, we experience tragic losses, and especially water disasters can tend to be connected to Pisces, like hurricanes and floods. And of course, when it all becomes overwhelming and the seeking of spirituality, which is ideal Pisces, is not done, then we turn to managing behaviors, dependencies, addictions, numbing out. And we can feel like our nervous system or our immune system is, having some kind of challenge when we are, you know, in an overwhelmed situation with our Pisces energy. Now, the reason I mention on this slide touchstones is because this Mercury retrograde in that section of your chart where you have Pisces is going to be connected to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that happened on February 20th. The Neptune, of course, is the planet that rules Pisces. And technically, what we're meant to do here is to use our Saturn function, the part of us that builds something to last, to build something that's aligned with our Neptune. And the area that the Saturn Neptune happened was at 0 degrees of Aries. That's right next to Pisces. So for the last good year, Saturn and Neptune were traveling very close to each other in the last degrees of Pisces. They were technically conjunct already, and they were bringing together all of these principles of Pisces in a more disciplined, grounded, organized fashion. So this Mercury retrograde in Pisces is meant to help us review what we need to know in our own chart so that we can know what we're building. The Saturn Neptune asks us to build something in alignment with our soul path, with our highest frequency goals and visions for this life as a soul. And so reviewing this Pisces area gives us like more of that energy to work with and helps us maybe say no to the things that don't work and say yes to these higher frequencies. And the other touchstone is the fact that the North Node has been in Pisces since January 2025. Moving backwards as it does, comes in at, the last degree, and then it moves all the way to 0 and then moves into the next sign, which it will do this summer. And so in that, we've also all been getting a opening to the higher frequency of Pisces energy. We are asked with that North Node transit to surrender and trust and know there is great meaning in this world, even when we feel the overwhelm and the tragic losses, that there's some part of us that has to come to understand the higher purpose that exists within all experiences. Now, shadow periods are something that many astrologers pay attention to. And the question in my mind is that reasonable or not? I know a number of other astrologers that I respect a lot who, like me, feel like it's kind of ridiculous to pay so much attention to it. The shadow basically represents the point that the retrograde is going to go back to. And so you have this time period that starts 3 weeks, approximately 2 to 3 weeks maybe, before the Mercury retrograde starts. And then the Mercury retrograde goes back to that point. And then even though it goes direct, it's considered that it's in shadow all the way to where it started. And so this is, the Mercury retrograde itself is 3 weeks. And if you add 3 weeks of shadow on both sides of it, we're talking 27 weeks. And that is obviously exactly 50% of the, 52 weeks that we have in a year. So that is a lot of time to be blaming everything on Mercury retrograde, and especially to be not doing things, to say, well, I can't sign documents, I can't take a job, I can't buy a house. That is, in my mind, it's too much. And I understand that it is, the idea of the shadow is not fundamentally traditional. Now, there's lots of things that I agree to change in astrology and grow and evolve, but this is one that I would say, first of all, I feel like there's too much fear mongering going on about Mercury retrogrades. And second of all, the shadows, I just can't get behind worrying about them excessively. So, myths, fears, and realities. Here are some of the main things people feel about Mercury retrograde, right? Technology and travel. You might experience delays, you might experience breakdowns, miscommunications, errors in document, errors in your own judgment. That you're likely to change your mind about a purchase made during Mercury retrograde. There's mechanical breakdowns and failures and fuzzy brain, fuzzy communication, can't find the word, things moving around. Uh, all of these I have experienced. Everybody I talk to has tended to experience some of these things. Each Mercury retrograde is a little different depending on what sign it's in and where it falls in your chart. Some people do a little bit better with them than others. I find that it seems like we all want to blame Mercury retrograde now whenever anything goes badly or is confusing or we miss some words or we make an error. So I think it's kind of an unfair excuse sometimes. I was thinking about the kinds of, tricksters that we can have about Mercury retrograde. And certainly like Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune transits can often mimic Mercury retrograde. Like Uranus, there could be just like too much energy, too much electricity, technological problems. Neptune transit. I know some of you have been going through Neptune on your ascendant or Neptune on your Mercury for years, and you felt like you were in endless Mercury retrograde. Lack of sleep can be part of feeling confused and delusional and making bad choices. So we have to be a little bit careful. Like it's like I want to give it some validity because it seems to be true. I certainly cannot deny the fact that I personally felt very affected by this last Mercury retrograde in Pisces because it was going over my moon and Mercury in Pisces. I had a lot of errors and confusions and a kind of a psychic overwhelm where I just couldn't drive forward with as much intensity as I might normally do. But there have been some people who have been doing little kinds of surveys or research on Mercury retrograde. One of them that was notable to me was somebody who was able to analyze the airline lost luggage statistics for a period of time and was looking at the difference between lost luggage in Mercury retrograde days versus lost luggage in Mercury direct days. And they found that there was no statistical difference. So, I think we need to take it with a grain of salt. One of the things that's happening these days with the excessive amount of astrology that's online is that people want to make a big splash. Sometimes I see these headlines like, oh my God, be scared, hide for 3 weeks. Mercury is going to be retrograde. And we need to stay grounded and not get swept away in the fear wave. The fear of retrogrades, whether it's Mercury or any retrograde, is it limits our sense of empowerment, our sense of free will and consciousness, and to understand that, again, everything has a meaning and a purpose. So, an empowering approach is to move into a Mercury retrograde cycle with all the re words, reevaluate, revisit, revise, rethink, reconnect, redo, rework, reorganize, going backward, looking at things. It's a great time to edit your documents. Many times errors of the past come up to be seen and can be corrected. You'll find that like with bank account errors and things like that you missed, you'll notice it when Mercury is retrograde. That's a good use of it. And so you can look for errors. You can do some kind of, book work or something where You want to double check and triple check things. You can think of this as a very introverted internal time and take extra time to review your life, to review your work approach, to review your relationships. I tend to say that it's best to avoid new key decisions if possible. The thing that I've seen the most is when people make a decision out of nowhere in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. They decide to get married, they decide to get divorced, they decide to leave their job and take a new one that they weren't really thinking about before, or they are driving through a town and they decide to buy a house and it wasn't on their radar before. Those are the decisions that I've noticed tend to be the ones that people reflect back on and undo and wish that they hadn't done. uh, those are coming out of like what should be a review time where you maybe make some adjustments, but wait until later. But if somebody has been looking for a job for 6 months and they get offered the job, or they've been trying to sell their house for 3 months and they get a contract, I might advise them, to be careful, to wait until Mercury is direct, maybe to have the final closing, or to take the job but not have the start date till after Mercury's direct or something like that. But I'm not going to tell people to not do it at all. It's always advised that one backs up devices, uh, proofreads everything carefully. If you have to buy something, because this always happens, right? If your device breaks down when Mercury's retrograde, you often have to buy a new one during the retrograde to replace it. So you're going to want to have warranties or insurance for technological purposes, purchases, or trip reservations if you make a reservation. And this, I always see this for me. It's when Mercury's retrograde is always when I want to book trips. It's when I'm thinking about it and I want to go somewhere. So, just make sure that you have some insurance and you feel like you have flexibility to get out of it. And always take an interesting book on a travel day, something that has at least 500 pages. So if you get delayed somewhere, you can relax into it and enjoy yourself. It's interesting to note that the Mercury retrogrades of 2026 are all in water. This one that we've just been in, of course, is Pisces. Then at the end of June into July, we have a Cancer Mercury retrograde and then a Scorpio, actually, in Scorpio season. And to me, what this reflects is that we are in a need to review our emotional, spiritual, intuitive, healing needs. We need to understand that soul level framework right away from Pisces. We need to understand who our soul family is with Cancer, what we need to be healed and nourished. And with Scorpio, we want to go into a deep review of that part of our chart. And it's asking us to go deep into understanding our psychology and some of our deeper karmic issues and transforming them so that we move forward after these 2 years, 2025, 2026, where we are coming into a new world, all the outer planets changing signs. These Mercury retrogrades give us a chance to review the higher frequency, emotional, nourishing energies. Now, if you were born with Mercury retrograde in your natal chart, what you need to know here is that you're always in your own personal Mercury retrograde. I found most people will tell me that they've learned that they have to double check and triple check everything. There's a tendency to learn in your own unique way. This could be something that's defined as a learning disability, like, uh, being, oh, I'll think of the word in a moment. Um, yeah, but some kind of uniqueness could be diagnosed, or it's just your own feeling about the way that you learn, and you start to understand how you need to study and how you experience reading and life. Um, and then sometime, because the 21 days of Mercury retrograde translates to 21 years, sometime before age 21, your Mercury progresses direct, and then you're finished that independent course of study. And most people I know with Mercury retrograde in their chart will tell me that when Mercury is retrograde by transit 3 times a year, it sort of feels normal to them and they feel really good about it. And the word I was looking for a moment in my own Mercury retrograde brain was dyslexia. That can be one of the ways that a person is learning differently. And then we have progressed changes. And I'm going to ask again to please turn your mute on if it is not on. Progressed changes. The Mercury retrograde at birth is going to go direct at some time, as I said, within 21 years. So at that point, you've finished your independent course of study. You've maybe finished some karmic learning. You are likely to feel more confident about your knowledge and learning issues are resolved. So it's like you're born with this mandate to learn things in your own unique way, different from family and culture. And then you say, okay, I've done that, and now I'm moving forward with my own perspectives. Now, if you had Mercury direct at birth and then sometime in your life it goes retrograde for 21 years, you're likely to enter a new program of learning differences that you didn't know you had or you needed to do. And you also might notice that you develop intuitive capabilities, that you feel, maybe misunderstood at first. Something is going on around communication and learning. And again, family and culture are not imprinting you so intensely. So as we come to, completion on this, little discussion about Mercury retrograde, as you know, for those of you who are in person here today, we can take a look at a few charts and just see where the Mercury retrograde has been affecting you and talk about what maybe conclusions or ideas have been coming forward to you during this time that you might be thinking about taking forward with all the Aries energy coming up next month. But for right now, just take a deep breath and feel that retrograde energy, that coming to the end of this conscious review. Remembering that the lotus grows in the mud and the muck, and it's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's powerful. This is such a Piscean image. And just to remind you, we've still got openings in my peer group in Seattle in May, the Opa Consulting Skills in Chicago. I've added a Zoom consulting skills that starts at 4 in the afternoon on Fridays for 6 weeks. This is to allow the Australians to participate in it, but at Friday night is kind of a good time zone or time zone for lots of people. It's 4 till 7 Pacific. That makes it 7 till 10 East Coast. The Astro Cycles class, I've changed to June 13th as a start time so that the intuitive skills for astrologers will be complete by then in case you want to do both of them and don't want them to overlap. And getting ready for NORWAC, and I'm really excited about my talk on the creative soul. So that's what's coming up. And let's talk about charts.